Hey guys, welcome to another Blender Nerd tutorial. In this one I'm going to address the age-old beginner's question of how do I create that glow effect? You've probably seen this question a few times, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you 5 different ways to make that glow effect. So, starting with the most primitive way I know, and that is with halos. Basically, never use this because it's primitive and you don't need it. It was used before the compositor came into use in Blender, so yeah. Basically all you have to do is take your mesh, which I have here as a mesh, and not a curve. Curves don't seem to work. You press Alt-C to convert it to a mesh. Yeah, and then you just got to duplicate this object, and then right-click to cancel any movement. Then in the Materials tab, you got to press 2, or whatever that number is, to basically copy the material, but make it so that this material doesn't affect both objects, it's only affecting this one. So what we're going to do is click Halo up there, and that's going to make these funny glowing dots. Now you can change some strange settings down here, like rings, to make it look cool, but yeah. Now if we render this now, we will notice that it looks scary, right? That's because we have a lot of vertices and the halo alpha is on 1, which means every single dot is going to be this big ball of glowing blueness. So I'm going to change this down all the way to 0.01, so you can hardly even see it in the preview thingy, and then render it again, and you'll notice it's got a nice glowing thing. But there are some obvious problems, like these sort of concentrated spots here where there's more vertices, and that's why we don't use this method anymore. So, die. Delete that halo object. Now what we're going to do is use the compositor. So what you first have to do is render a still image by pressing image here or F12. So now we have a basic image here, and we're going to go straight into the node editor. Then select composite nodes, use nodes, and backdrop. So now, if we add a viewer node by selecting the first one and Shift A, output viewer, you'll see our image there. If you want a tutorial on the compositor, I have one that's called the Advanced Compositing Tutorial. It's not that advanced, it's for beginners too. So anyway, here's our image, right? Now we want to add a glow. The first kind of glow we're going to add is another semi-primitive one, at least I think it is, using blur nodes. And that means we add a filter blur. Now what we're going to do is change this to fast Gaussian, then connect this to here, and then just for now connect that to the viewer node as well. You can see how it's connected there. So now all we have to do is change these X and Y values to maybe 20 and 20, and we have a sort of very blur there, kind of small, maybe 15, and that's going to give us a sort of close-up blur. And yes, then you just need to mix it in, connect this to the bottom one, and the render layer to the top one, and then to the thing. And as you can see, whoa, it's kind of blurred, which is okay. You can play around with the factor of the blur here, and yeah. So, if you like that, that's cool. But if you want to add some more blur, like have the blur brightest closest to the object and then sort of glowing a little bit outside as well, you can always duplicate this blur node and change its values to, I don't know, like 50, and then connect it all up again, and you'll have to duplicate the mix node as well, so that you can mix the two blur nodes together, and then take the the mix node and connect it to the other mix node, and that'll do fine. You can change the values here for how much they're mixed into each other. A better thing to do might be to screen it and that's just going to layer them on top of each other, and that tends to work quite well like that. You can always just keep it on 1 if you like. That seems to work well, looking pretty good. And one last thing I like to do, if it kind of looks strange and sort of washed out a little bit, you can always add a RGB curve and just play around with that. So yeah, that's that kind of blur, and it works quite well, but it doesn't always work that well because it takes the whole image and blurs it. You can't really see it in this example because there's nothing else. But what we're going to do, well, yeah, the problem is if you had a tree in the background, that would also be blurred and glowing, and you'd have to play with like the multiply or something. But yeah, it's not as effective and it takes much longer to set up. So instead of all of this crap over here, I'm going to add our third type of blur node, and that is a glare. And basically what that does is does all of those blurring and whatnot, and does it in one node, and you connect it and it's much quicker. The advantage of this is that there's more than one type of glare. Now you can play around with these, but the two I'm going to show you today are the streaks and the fog glow. Let's start with fog glow. Now this doesn't seem to have done anything yet. That is because our image isn't bright enough to be affected by the glare, because there's a threshold here. So what we have to do is reduce the threshold as far down as it needs to be, and you'll notice that the more you reduce it, the brighter your image will become if you have other objects around, and you'll have to reduce it quite a bit. There you go, you can sort of see it. Maybe I'll do it all the way down there. So yeah, now it's sort of glowed. I don't know if you can see it, but it is, I promise you, compared to that. Yes, definitely. Play with the threshold. I never go down to 0, but for this image I have to. You can change the size of the glow around, and it's pretty cool. The one thing that's also useful is this mix value over here. You could, excuse me, increase it to add more glow in, or less glow, theoretically. And always hover your mouse over to see what it says. Whatever. Anyway, and then you can change the quality, and this sort of changes the size as well. And yeah. So that's basically that, the fog glow. Now what we're going to do is go to our fourth type, the glare spokes, or streaks, that's it. And that is a cool one that I see overused every day. Now, one thing I'd like to warn you about is that everybody uses this everywhere, and it's kind of been overkilled, like it's the new chromatic aberration or something. Now, as cool as this looks with this design, yeah, okay, it just looks cool. My point is that you can change the settings here. Iterations is basically, I think it's got to do with the length and how much it glows, but you can't really change that much. So we'll just keep it on 3 for now. Then, color modulation. That's a very cool one. You'll notice if you change it, the glare changes colors. And maybe you cannot see it so well. No, because this is simply blue. Anyway, it sort of changes the color of the glare, the spokes, and the glowiness, and that looks really cool sometimes. It's sort of like the chromatic aberration of glare, so don't overuse it. The other thing, you still have this mix value here, and your threshold is still a 0. Now, one cool thing before I get to the streaks is the angle offset, and you'll notice that you can like change this around and maybe make it like 45 degrees to get a angular, or something less obvious like 10 to get a slightly angled glare, which is very nice if you're, depending on what you're making, like if you want to add some sort of strangeness to your image, like make it seem, I don't know, I saw it like, the Heroes program with like all the superheroes with powers and things. I saw they used that a lot in the carnival scenes, just to make it seem more eerie and mystical, kind of strange, surreal look to it. Anyway, and here you have the fade value as well, and you can increase that, and it increases like the size basically, but you'll notice if you put it all the way on 1, it can get quite obvious what it does. Like yeah, you can play around with that. It does look cool at times, but I don't change it too much unless I want to make a glow bigger. And then I don't make it that much bigger. So anyway, now finally the streaks number, total number of streaks. Now you can see we have 4. That means we have up, down, left, and right. And you'll see if we change it down to 2, that it does that, which is also very cool. Can be used for motion, like to simulate motion or something. It looks awesome. And then if you really want, and you're feeling stupid, you can increase it to something like 16, which I think is the max, I'm not sure. And that'll give you this freaky glow effect that looks really weird. But I guess it could be cool, it has its place. And yeah, that is the 4th kind of glowing effect. Now for the 5th kind, which isn't really a kind in itself, it's the combination of these effects. So I'm going to open up a scene for that I made just now, and it is a torch, right? I've got this torch thingy, extremely high poly, so I'm going to render this now and pause the recording. Right, so there's my render. Yeah. Now as you can see, I have this big white blob here where the light is going to be coming from, and that is obviously on purpose. So what I'm going to do in this node editor, yeah, just move it down like that. First of all, I want to decrease the brightness of the overall image, but not of this bright part, so I'm going to add an RGB curve and just drag this down like that. Maybe not that much. Yeah, that's okay. And then I'm going to, first of all, add that glare node. And firstly, with the glare node, I'm not going to do the streaks yet. I'm going to do the fog glow. You'll see why in a second. And now I just need to reduce the threshold so that it picks that up. That's looking good. Maybe the size as well. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe I'll change that to high. Maybe not. So, it's barely visible, as you can see. So what I'm going to do, and again, is duplicate this glare node, connect them to each other, and connect it again, just so that it makes that brightness even brighter. That's a nice little trick you can do, is just duplicate it. And now I'm going to add another glare node, the very same, and leave it on streaks. And now when I connect them, you'll see it's got the 4 streaks. But instead I'm going to make it 2, just because I like it like that. And then, what I'm going to do is obviously decrease the threshold. Some more. Yeah, that's fine. And increase the fade a little bit so that it's bigger, and then increase the color modulation a lot. And now you see what I meant by it sort of changes the colors. It's very cool. And yes, that is all I'm going to do for there. I could change this to low, and that does seem to look very cool, but I think I'll leave it on medium. So, if you like the effect, you can always duplicate it and just do that, increase that, maybe change it to low this time, or maybe change this one to medium and this one to low. whatever you like. And that is a very cool looking glow, if I may say so myself. And then of course, if you really want to, you can duplicate that and connect them all again. And there is a very, very bright glow. Very bright. So bright it's actually scary. So yeah, that's all good and fine. So that's basically the combination of glow nodes, if you can call them that. Always remember that a combination is best. And the best thing to do after using glowing effects is just to adjust these brightness things. If you want to make it glow even more, add a bit of contrast by making this S shape. And yeah. So thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope that helped you and answered your question. So yeah, this is Greg Zoll from BlenderNerd.com, and good